You're joining me as I cycle out of the town of Clifden, south on the EuroVelo 1 route, and I'm going to be cycling down to Casla today. So that's a interesting wee bit of the EuroVelo route, and it makes a couple of decisions that are a bit different, I think, than it's made in the last two legs that we've taken so far on our way down from Westport. And I'll talk to you about those as we get to them. And we have the first one coming up here, which is rather than take the coast road, it's going to take the road across the Roundstone bog. So if you do end up doing the EuroVelo 1, Westport to Galway, when you leave Clifden and you're about to turn inland again, it's worth this diversion of, I don't know, maybe about 3 kilometres down here to Mannon Bay, particularly if the weather is good. It's probably one of the most spectacular beaches anywhere, actually. The white sand on it it's colloquially called coral. It's actually the roots of seaweed, kelp, but it's a very sheltered bay that goes out a couple of kilometres. I've kayaked in it previously, and it's great for swimming. And even on a grey, overcast day like today, you can see how vividly blue-green the sea looks. But you can imagine what that looks like on a sunny day. Anyway, this is us back on the actual route, which is going to go inland across the Roundstone bog rather than following the coast, which also means you're skipping Roundstone itself and also Dogs Bay. So in terms of the overall EuroVelo route, this is definitely one of the bits where I'm inclined to think maybe the other way would have been better. So on the Roundstone bog road here, this is typical, I'd say, of about half of this EuroVelo route. It's on these very quiet roads that get very little traffic. I think 3 cars have passed me in about 8 kilometres. It's a Sunday morning, and there's a car coming up now. I can hear it, so you can hear them from a long way off. That's because the quicker route basically goes down by the coast. It's also one worth cycling, but I really enjoy the quietness of this because it's all birdsong, apart from every now and again that car. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a lot on the bog that's actually worth seeing. So, when you're coming across the Roundstone bog, one thing to look out for is this island, and you'll probably see another couple of examples of this on the route. So, you might look at this landscape and imagine this is kind of natural wilderness or something. But in fact, what it is, it's the result of sheep overgrazing. And that's what demonstrates it is the few little spots the sheep can't easily get to, including this island here because it's in a lake, will actually have trees on them. In some cases quite big trees. Now you can see it's not like they've no struggle with the wind. You can see as you go from right to left there the way it's sloping upwards, and that presumably is with the prevailing wind. But probably quite a lot of the bog would in fact have some sort of low forest or scrub on it. And the thing is, when you get scrub like that, then later on taller trees can establish themselves in it. So quite what the climax vegetation would look like is unknown. But anyway, something to do when you're on the Roundstone bog. Have a look at that. I would presume the argument for EuroVelo taking the bog route is both that this road does tend to be quieter, but also that this is one of the largest blanket bogs in all of Europe. In fact, only the flow in Scotland is, I think, bigger. I cycled across that back in 2022. Check out my Scottish playlists, where you'll find similar day-by-day diaries. But Scotland was fantastic to cycle around, and some really spectacular mountains on that trip. Those mountains in the distance are the 12 Bens, and in fact there's a third parallel road running just at the foot of them, which is that N59. Wouldn't recommend that route, it's very busy. And here my luck with the weather runs out. So as you can see, the weather has turned against me. I've had 115 kilometres to do today, and the forecast is basically for this to continue. Pretty medium drizzly rain, and unfortunately the winds are going to be picking up as the day goes on, so not going to be much fun crossing the high mountain bogs, but sure, that's life. Not such a great view of the mountains today, I'm afraid. The sudden change in the weather there is also a clue that I'm kind of cheating with this section. So what actually happened was I filmed the recording up to the point you come off the Roundstone bog on one day, and then a couple of days later I was filming this section, which was where I was heading for Galway. I'd seen a fantastic display of the Aurora Borealis in the meantime because I was staying with friends down near Roundstone itself. Anyway, the section that we are now watching is when I'm heading for Galway, and when I get to Galway, I'm getting a train to Dublin, and the next morning I'm getting a train to Rosslare, and then the next morning I'm getting the ferry to Bilbao in order to do my cycling around Spain trip of 2024, Northern Spain. Again, check out my playlists if you want to see that. But in other words, I have no room for error here. I have to get to Galway. My original intention was to follow the EV1 all the way, but that's about 130 kilometers, including this detour. If you're using a map, there was probably a plan to run the EV1 along that side route, but they probably didn't get it due to land access. So watch out for that bit and follow the signposts rather than following your map or your navigation. Don't make the mistake I did in other words. That's what the other end of that track looks like, but there's another gate at that end. So it now takes up across the bog, and it's going to be heading across this bit of mountain bog all the way to Derryrush. What you can't see, but you can perhaps guess at, is there's also a very, very strong wind in this. So I had to make Galway. I had to catch a train. Train was about 5 o'clock in the evening, and I was kind of aware I was probably being a little bit optimistic that I was actually going to be able to get that far in these conditions. The reality of cycling in Ireland, though, is if you don't, you're going to get days like this, sometimes a couple of days in a row like this. Ideally, you'd be able to just spend the day in the pub or a museum or somewhere instead and not actually have to cycle in it. But if, like me, you have to get to a destination by a particular point, then you are stuck with the cycling. This road across the mountain bog is a fantastic trip. I've done it in good sunny weather a couple of times coming the other way, and it's very beautiful. There's some great lakes on the other side, and then at Derryrush we're going to come out and it's going to take us back onto the regional roads and heading up towards Casla. As we're coming onto this section, we're coming up towards the Pádraig Pearse Centre. Pádraig Pearse was one of the main leaders of the 1916 insurrection in Dublin, along with most of the rest of the leadership. He was executed by the British in the aftermath, and he used to spend holidays here. So I'm getting there. I may cheat and skip the EuroVelo route once I hit Casla and instead take the coast road back. I'll see how I'm doing at that point. Well, holidays is perhaps a bit of an oversimplification. They were holidays. He was a school teacher, and he was very much into the Gaelic revival and the revival of the language. And he sort of believed that the people in this region and rural Ireland and the islands in particular had some sort of essential essence of what it was to be Irish. So he would be coming down here, going around people's cottages, talking to them and trying to discover what all this was. Now, to be honest, I'm much more into James Connolly than Pearse. Connolly was a socialist and a revolutionary syndicalist who also executed in the aftermath of the Rising, and much more concerned with class politics. I've discovered that although Ireland doesn't have covered bus shelters, we do, interestingly enough, have this bike shed, which seems to be by the local recycling bins. I mean, this is on the EuroVelo route, so that may be also partially why they have it here, but it's very well constructed, considering it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, so Casla is in about 10 kilometers from here, and I'm going to make a decision when I get there as to whether I'm going to continue trying to follow the EuroVelo route or I'm going to instead take the coast road. The coast road is probably 20 kilometers shorter and doesn't involve crossing a mountain. There is more traffic on it via Galway, but I'll see what state I'm in. It's been pretty tough. Lashing rain the entire distance here and strong winds. So yeah, pretty banjaxed. There is in fact a small picnic area in there on the right, the opposite diagonal basically of that bridge, so that might make a good stop-off point if you want to have a break. So we're on the regional road, I think the R336 here, which is actually busy enough, but the good news about it is that we're going to go off it for a bit. This is one of these bits where the EuroVelo takes a slightly longer way of getting to a point, but in fact it's a good idea because you're getting quieter roads but also very much more scenic roads. So this is this little leg here that's basically 3 sides of a rectangle, and then we'll bring us back briefly onto the R336 about 8 kilometers, I think, up the road here. So this is great classic single track road in Ireland. Unlike the Scottish equivalent, we don't really have formal passing places for these, but everybody just has to know where the nearest place to reverse to is, or if you see somebody coming from a distance, pull into a driveway or a field opening. Everybody manages it well enough. So the other thing to watch as I'm going along here is the speed those clouds are moving at up above me. Now, this is obviously time lapse, so it is speeded up footage, but it gives you an idea of just how intense the winds are. And the thing I'm worrying about on this section is that when I effectively, I'm going to be taking a left turn and then heading more or less directly into the direction these clouds are coming from once I've come through Casla. This was my lunch break, quick chicken fillet roll, which is the staple for cycling around Ireland if you want to eat cheaply while doing so. And coming out of Casla, the weather breaks at this point. I'm finally getting some sunshine. This is the end of the rain, but I try going up the hill. So EuroVelo 1 goes up there, climb over the mountains. However, there's a nasty wind blowing. I went 2 kilometers up and I decided in terms of catching the train and battery range and everything, it was a little too risky to take that long route around. So instead, I'm going the short way, which is taking the main road from here to Galway. Disadvantage of that is there's much more traffic. But sure, you can't win them all. So at that point, EuroVelo 1 goes up over the mountains and then down to Uachtarad, which is a very famous kind of trout fishing and salmon fishing village in Ireland. And then it follows the Loch Corrib until it gets to Galway. I have never cycled that particular bit. I have cycled this coast road a few times. It's very, very busy, intense traffic, particularly once you get to Spiddal, but figured it would be good to show you guys because you might hit the same issue. I successfully caught the train at Galway, got back to Dublin and did all that complicated journey to get to Spain 3 days later. Now, I am planning to return this year and do that last section of the EuroVelo from Casla into Galway itself, and then head from the south and following EuroVelo through the Burren. So make sure you subscribe to get those videos as I get them together, and also give me a follow on Instagram and maybe even TikTok, eBike Touring Life. I post live footage from the side of the road when I'm doing that, so you'll get more immediate things. The videos take a while for me to edit and put together. Do check the video description. I'll include a link to my route map on cycle travel in there, and links to relevant other videos. Also, do check the comments, and if you have something to add to this narration, then add your own comments. I'm always grateful to receive extra information and even corrections in the comments. They can be a little treasure trove of additional information for people who are thinking of doing the route. Anyway, hope you found the video useful, and hopefully someday I shall see you on the road.